Dear proFAITHsional, hello. This is the behind the mic commentary for the podcast proFAITHsional Favor. And here I would like to just share a little bit of the behind the mic and then a little bit of the purpose for the episode. So the second episode is titled Before You Leave a Job You Dislike. And in it, I tell the story of 4 different employees that I've worked with and the way that they abandoned their jobs. I was their manager or supervisor. And so these stories are some of the most dramatic walkouts that I have experienced to date. And so I love telling those stories. They are my favorite. And the reason why it is because, number 1, yes, they are dramatic. Number 2, they have a little bit of a surprise element. And number 3, there's a little bit of suspense to them. And so just as a little bit of an update, I have heard from each of the employees that I mentioned. I've heard from 3 of them. I have not heard from the one that stabbed her boyfriend. And yes, you heard right. I have not heard from the one that stabbed her boyfriend. And I hope that she's okay. However, from the other 3, one of them, she contacted me to apologize and also to say just thank you for the many opportunities that we gave her, because we did give her some major opportunities and some major breaks. And then the other 2 contacted me because they needed just some information about the time that they worked with us. And so lesson number 1, you never know when your paths are going to recross with someone that you used to work with in the past. So for that matter and that matter alone, make sure that whenever you are considering leaving a job, that you see yourself in the future and you think, what kind of person will these people remember? It sounds simple, doesn't it? But I know in reality it can be a little bit more challenging than that. Now, the reason I wanted to tell those stories is because they inspired me. I mean, I never in a million years would have guessed that I would have been working with people capable of such things. But at the end of the day, such is the luck of life. But the reason they inspired me is because I thought, surely there must be something that can be done in order to prevent some of these situations from happening. So that was one thing. The other reason I wanted to kind of say the stories is because a lot of times, even you that might be watching and you, after you listen to the episode, you're like, I would never do such a thing. And I question that. And the reason why is because if you ever called your employer to say that you are taking a sick day, even though you were in perfect health, you're not that different. At the end of the day, you're still kind of walking out from your responsibility, even if it's just for that one day. And if you've ever done such a thing, you consider doing such a thing, or you are doing such a thing, then you really have to think of your professional character. And what does that really say about you? You may be very well aligned to everybody else, but you cannot escape who you really truly are. So check yourself. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would like to say is that just because you walk out from the job, that doesn't mean that the job or the company or the place of employment all of a sudden crashes and burns. No, the place won't crash and burn. Well, not literally, yes, maybe everybody that is left with the job and maybe a lot of other people are going to have to pick up for the slack and for the fact that you may not be there, but life still goes on. And and if the company and the place of employment was there before you join it, trust me, they'll make it after you. So take a step back, and before you leave a job that you dislike, just think about what really motivates you, what keeps you there, how come, you accepted the job in the first place. I'm not saying that everybody that you encounter is going to be easy to work with, or that the job that you're currently doing, you're going to love it every single day. No, work is work, and your job is not always going to be easy. Heck, nobody's job is ever going to be easy. There's always going to be tough decisions to make, or there are going to be difficult challenges that we're going to have to just face. It's still the number one thing that I want you to take away is that the way that you leave a job says a lot more about you than the way that you got the job in the first place. So just think about that. Just really, really, really think about that. And the second thing that I would like for you to take from this is that this is not really a unique situation. This really could happen anywhere that you work, or you might know people that have done this. And the reason for it is that the statistics tell us that The job separation rates are going up. Every year they increase just a little bit more and more. And there are some industries that those rates are as high as 80%. I mean, think about it. That's astounding. That means that nearly 8 out of 10 employees in any particular industry, or in some industries, they're walking out, or they're abandoning, they're quitting, they're resigning, they're leaving their jobs, they're changing jobs. So, at the end of the day, people are leaving jobs for either better jobs, or they're just leaving jobs because, heck, they want to leave a job, whatever the case may be. The point is that this is not necessarily a unique thing. And if it's not a unique thing, then the one thing that we can all kind of think about is that professionalism is something that just transcends any industry, any job, or any sort of work that you do. Whether you're working in a restaurant, or in an office, or in a corporation, or heck, a daycare center. Professionalism is something that you can bring to the table. It's never something that is for the select few. And if it's something that you might be lacking, you can continue to develop. For that, I invite you to listen to Professional Favor. That is the purpose of the podcast, okay? But really, it's just a matter of us really thinking, who do you really truly want to be? Now, I've shared with you a little bit of what got me to the mic. However, it was very important for me that when I sat at the mic, that I told these stories with the utmost respect, and making sure that I safeguarded the identity of the people that I was mentioning, because it was really about the examples, not so much about the person in particular. So if they ever listen to the episode, or if they're ever watching this, I want you to know that my point was never to point you out. But because at some point, if I hired those individuals, it's because I saw something of value in them, and I saw that there was in some ways things that we could have accomplished together. So I fully stand by those positive things, and I would never want to minimize from those things. Can we work on the departure? 100%. Now, from the production standpoint, recording the episode was pretty easy, and that's for a few reasons. Number one, because I had already recorded the Spanish episode, and for those two episodes, I wanted to keep it very parallel and very similar, because at the end of the day, this is the episode that really gives the examples or some of the stories of what really got me to consider podcasting in the first place. Had I not encountered some of those employees, maybe I wouldn't even be telling some of these stories or I wouldn't even feel compelled to maybe encourage other professionals or other people to really bring their most professional self to work. So that was one thing. I had already practiced. I had also practiced because I had told these stories a couple of times. I mean, I've already told you, these are my favorite stories to tell. And so whenever things were going on, and I would be talking to friends or some former colleagues, and I would talk about how crazy my current work was. I mean, the only way that I could really describe the craziness was to share a couple of examples. And so these were some of the examples. And so just sharing from the stories from that perspective, the stories were fresh in my mind, and I could kind of just work through them. However, one of the things that annoyed me or irked me every time I share some of these stories is that people would always want to question me, and they want to question maybe how I hired these people, how the interview went, how come I didn't see this coming, and what could I have done differently. While I'm grateful to be able to critically think through some of those situations, at the same point, the reason I was annoyed is because I was put almost like I had to defend myself. And I kept thinking like, well, hold up, wait a minute. I wasn't the one who walked out from the job the way that they did. So I felt like, why am I having to defend against their actions? So that was a little kind of mind-boggling for me, because it's like they're the ones in the wrong, not me. Right? But anyways, going back to the production. From the production standpoint, it was easy because I had already had practice, and that kind of helps. However, the only technical difficulty I encountered was because when I finally decided to record that episode, I had traveled to Houston, and I was just visiting friends. And the afternoon that I sat down and I decided to record, true to Houston's weather, there was a torrential rain that poured down. And although a nice little sprinkling of rain could be relaxing and calming, A torrential rain and downpour and thunderstorming was not gonna be appealing, I thought. So I thought to myself, I best pause and then just pick up right when it ends. So from that standpoint, the production was easy. What was hard was actually getting to the mic. And that's because this would have been, I mean, this is the second episode, but it was the first time that I would sit down and record an episode by myself. And I almost had to work through some of my insecurities or some of my self-doubts or some of my kind of fears, because I kept thinking to myself, well, what if I sit down and I run out of things to say? A little bit unlikely, but a fear nonetheless. And then I also had to kind of, encourage myself that no, these stories because you've lived them. You've told them so many times. They just kind of just flow out of my mouth. And because the only sense that you would be engaging was listening to me alone talking and telling these stories, it was very important for me to think about how can I best deliver them sequentially that made sense, and also without having all of these expressions for you to really get the point of how dramatic they were. So those were some of the things that I had to work on the nerve to kind of deliver on the mic. And so while the content itself I felt very comfortable with, it was the delivery that I had to kind of work through and then figure out the best way to put it out there. And there you have it. That's how the second episode of the podcast, Professional Favor, came to be. And so now you've heard my piece. And if you would like to continue the conversation, then join the private group on Facebook and feel free to leave me any sort of comments or questions there, and then I'll be responding. But also, if you want a little bit more of Professional Favor, make sure to go to jarisagarcia.com. So make sure you tune in and listen to Professional Favor on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, bye-bye.